Hey, everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Today I'm going to be looking at a television show from the early 80s that just managed to get 12 episodes, about half a season. And in fact, was put on hiatus after 6 episodes. So you would think, okay, terrible TV series, right? Bad acting, bad writing, bad direction. Maybe it was low budget, cheap sets, something, or just maybe way too fringe for people to get into. Um, but really, none of that's true. And so this stands as a cautionary tale about just outright rejecting TV shows that didn't do particularly well. Now, the show I'm talking about is Tucker's Witch. So, Tucker's Witch makes it onto TV in 1982. It ran, it was on CBS. It ran from October 6th to November 10th, at which point it was put on hiatus, and then came back from March to June of 83. So the same season, the 82-83 season. Moved to Thursday nights at that point. And then that was it. It was gone. Essentially, it was canceled after episode 6, but they still had the other 6 episodes to show, and they wanted to use them up. So again, okay, well, what's wrong with this show? Well, let's talk about what the show is. It's a detective show. It's about a married couple, Rick and Amanda Tucker, who live in Laurel Canyon in L.A. And it's pretty standard early to mid 80s detective show. Probably more in the vein of like a Murder, She Wrote than a Magnum PI. Although it's worth remembering that at one point there was a crossover between Murder, She Wrote and Magnum PI. So maybe they weren't that different after all. But it's more in that vein. It does have action. It does have murders. It has all that kind of thing. But it's I don't know. It doesn't have the vibe though of a heavy action type show. I guess it's just in the way that it's filmed or what have you. Um, it stars Tim Matheson as Rick Tucker. Tim, for a lot of people, probably best remembered for his role in Animal House. For me, he's always going to be the voice of Jonny Quest. Love that cartoon. Katherine Hicks plays Amanda Tucker. Um, Again, probably, well, maybe best known to a lot of people from Seventh Heaven, but of course, being a nerd, to me, she's from Star Trek 4. Now, Amanda plays a witch. She has like psychic sort of powers, magical powers, which obviously kind of gives the show its gimmick, right? Because most shows in the period, detective type shows, tended to have some sort of a gimmick. Maybe it was location, like, Magnum PI being in Hawaii, so it's taking advantage of that location, for just the beauty of it and all that. Or it could be, something like Ironsides, right, where it's a guy solving crimes, but he's in a wheelchair. You wanted to have some kind of gimmick very often. So witchcraft is the gimmick for this show. The show also starred Alfre Woodard as Marcia, who was the Tucker's assistant, doing all the sort of brain work. So I can sort of it's the word I want here. I can empathize with what she was going through since that's what I do for a living. Not for a detective. Barrie plays Ellen, Amanda's mother, who's sort of a herbalist. She is not a witch. Amanda, gained the powers from Ellen's mother, so they skip a generation. So she has experience having grown up with a mother who had these powers without actually having them herself. And so she's there to sort of advise Rick a little bit. She lives with them. One of the elements of a good, masculine detective show is the cool car. I think for the less masculine shows that are going to have maybe skew towards more of a female demographic, it's the cool apartment or the cool house. I'm always hearing about like women being super jealous of Mary Tyler Moore's or Mary Richards' apartment on the Mary Tyler Moore show. Like that's, I don't know, maybe that's kind of a draw. And they do have a very cool house, well designed set. The other main character really is Dickens, who's this cat, who is the familiar of Amanda. And so very often it's when she's in contact with Dickens that she'll get sort of a psychic vision that helps sort of drive, the story. All right, so what are the flaws of this show that led it to being essentially, canceled, so to speak, after about 6 episodes? Well, concept-wise, was the concept a problem in and of itself? I would say no. I am not traditionally a big fan of these kinds of shows. I watched it because it was on Tubi, and I thought, okay, check it out. Might maybe make for a good review for the YouTube channel. See what it's all about. And even though it's not necessarily the kind of detective show I would typically watch, I actually came to really enjoy it. And I try to view these shows one episode a week, the way they would have been, broadcast originally. And I actually found myself kind of looking forward to Wednesday night when I would have, watch an episode of Tucker's Witch. It sort of has a good vibe to me. And again, that's coming from somebody who isn't necessarily the target demo and doesn't traditionally go for these kind of shows all that much. So I don't think from that standpoint there was any problem with the overall concept or vibe of the show. Now, there could have been a minor problem with the witchcraft angle. Typically, there's always the problem for the witchcraft to become a crutch, a sort of, deus ex machina that shows up when you absolutely need it in order to solve the whole problem. Typically, that didn't happen in the show. Maybe to some extent it would, but the Amanda character does not have full control of her powers. So there's sort of a learning process. You see her in some episodes where she's practicing a certain kind of move, a certain kind of trick, like turning off lights, and so she's, focusing on that and trying to get that right. So it wasn't typically a problem in that regard, but it also, if you're going to have the magic, you probably want it to play a bigger role in the resolution of the show. And I think that's, so you're on this kind of, thin line you're trying to straddle here of, we don't want to go too much, but we don't want to go too little. And I did find there were times where I almost forgot about the witchcraft angle of the show. Oftentimes she would have a vision that she didn't understand, and then it would become, more relevant as they gathered clues. So good for a detective show, but there's kind of a part of you going, well, then does she really need to have the vision in the first place if it's not leading them to a particular clue? So I think it's a tricky thing to handle. I think they did it relatively well, but there could have been, maybe a minor issue conceptually with the role the witchcraft played on the show. Otherwise, I think the mysteries were well structured. They were well written. You're following along as they're actually trying to find who's responsible. A lot of times, sometimes they would you'd kind of know in advance who it was, sort of like an episode of Columbo. Sometimes you wouldn't, and it's, maybe a little guesswork involved. That's traditionally what I like are shows where I'm trying to solve the mystery along with the PI, with the detective, and I don't know who it was. That's why I was never a big fan of Columbo, which I know probably Some people will instantly hate me because I said that. I got nothing against Columbo whatsoever. Owned a basset hound. He was cool. I'm cool with Columbo. But a lot of times, just for me, it was kind of like, well, you just showed me who the murderer is. Why the hell am I going to watch the show? You know, unless there's a chance that he's not going to be able to solve the crime and the guy can actually get away with it. Why? I don't care. So you got that sometimes with Tucker's Witch. Sometimes it was more of a mystery, but they're well laid out. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it from that regard. Um, the show looks good. It had a decent budget. There's a lot of location shots. Like I said, the sets well designed. No problems there. You got, decent, good actors in the supporting roles. I think that Tim Matheson and Katherine Hicks were fine. We're good in it. Sometimes I don't know if they had as much chemistry as they could have had as a married couple. I did question that sometimes, but maybe that's just me. I don't know that it wasn't like an obvious mismatch where you're gonna like going, I can't see these two people together like whatsoever. It wasn't like that. So I don't think it was an acting problem. I don't think it was a filming problem. I don't think it was a writing problem. Um, Really, what the problem was one of demographics um, on the show. Specifically, I think it was primarily going to appeal to a female demographic, you know, maybe, mid 20s into whatever, the 50s, 60s. I don't think you could be too old to watch the show per se. Um, could pull into a male demographic as well to some degree, but it wasn't really aimed at a male demographic like a Rockford Files or a Magnum PI was. And so in that regard, it kind of reminded me of like Murder, She Wrote, which got a lot of seasons and did extremely well. And I was often, when I'd be watching it, I'm kind of going, what does Murder, She Wrote have that this show doesn't have? Because I'll be honest, I was never all that into Murder, She Wrote. It was fine. I've seen a few episodes here and there, watched some episodes back in the day. It was fine, but it wasn't something like, oh God, I love this show. So I'm going, what am I missing? What does this show not have that show had? It's got elements of Bewitched to it, with the magic and with the married couple angle. Obviously, maybe the show that you could compare it to the best would be Heart to Heart, which also did very well. So, that's obviously a demographic that worked. It's a demographic that watched TV, that liked these kind of shows. So why are they not watching Tucker's Witch? Well, I think in this case, and again, this is the lesson for not rejecting shows that didn't do well outright. It was put on at just about the worst possible time it can be put on. 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesdays. The show was running up against, oh geez, there's another image I forgot to share from the first place. First episode, Ted Danson is in, and interestingly enough, actually airs, I think, after the first episode of a little show called Cheers that he was in. They kind of almost ran concurrently. And he was pretty good in it too. Anyways, sorry. So on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. against NBC's Quincy, which was a huge show. To me, I associate it with being sick at home from school, like around elementary school age, because like you'd get through maybe some of the morning cartoons and like the Today Show or whatever. And so help me God, it was always Quincy reruns, And so you're lying on the couch feeling miserable, and there's Quincy, which maybe is why I don't really have any desire to sit and watch Quincy. Kind of the same with like 7-Up. Your mom would give you 7-Up when you didn't feel well. And then you discover that like when you do feel well, you don't want 7-Up because you associate it with feeling sick. Quincy is the 7-Up of TV shows for me. But more importantly, it was up against ABC's Dynasty. If you're aiming for a largely female demographic, you're not beating Dynasty. And to be honest with you, you're probably getting more of a male demographic watching Dynasty as well, because you had some really sexy women and, you know, kind of, I don't know, provocative, seductive sort of scenes and stuff, which you didn't get in Tucker's Witch because it's about a married couple. And so it doesn't really go in that direction. So when you're up against Dynasty and a heavy hitter like Quincy, you're probably screwed unless you are really bringing the fire. And Tucker's Witch is a great little show, but it wasn't bringing the fire. I think almost, and I think it's also running against Quincy, which is another sort of detective show when you get right down to it. I think what you needed to do if you're going to fill that slot is find something that is going to appeal to folks who have no interest in Quincy and have no interest in Dynasty. Now, what is that? I don't know. Maybe it's a sci-fi show. Maybe it's some kind of a comedy or something. But when you're going up against Quincy and you're doing more or less the same thing, that's going to put you at a disadvantage when you're going up just against Dynasty, period, because it was such a big thing at the time. You're in trouble. And it was in trouble. And 6 episodes later, it's off on Wednesday night. Now, it shows up again later on Thursdays in the season, again at 10 p.m., and then it was up against 2020 and Hill Street Blues. Now, at that point, they were just dumping it there. They didn't care. Obviously, Hill Street Blues in 2020 were going to kick its butt, but they had 6 more episodes. They wanted to get rid of them. They wanted to use them up. And so, fine. We'll just use them up there. So, the series was later rerun on the USA Network, where it reverted back to its original pilot title of The Good Witch of Laurel Canyon. And you can find it now on Tubi, and I think episodes might be somewhere else too. I think you can get to them via the IMDb website. So it's kind of a sad tale of a show that had a lot going for it, really. Again, it was not a spectacular show. It wasn't the kind of show that was going to just explode. But it is a show that probably could have done well for 2 or 3 seasons, pulled in decent ratings, and, produced a lot of, solid episodes of TV. Frankly, much as you now would say, I mean, is anybody like mega excited about Hart to Hart? Other than them having done that funny like recreation of the credits of Hart to Hart a while back. God, I can't think of that guy's name. He was on Parks and Rec. Anyways, Hart to Hart's not exactly huge in the American consciousness at this point. It did very well at the time. Apparently, it was a major TV show for Audrey Hepburn. She never missed an episode. So it did great at the time, but nowadays it's not like, we're getting, Heart to Heart remakes or anything like that. It was a solid, decent show. I think Tucker's Witch could have been the same thing, but put into the schedule it was put in, it didn't have a chance. And so again, when you run across shows like this and you go, I've never heard of this show. And that was me. I'd never heard of Tucker's Witch in my life. I recognized Matheson. I recognized Hicks. So I was kind of intrigued. I'm like, okay, I know who they are. Maybe it's good. Who knows? At the time, it could have been a drama for all I knew. It could have been a comedy. I had no idea what it was when I, first initially clicked on it. And you're going to run into shows like that. And my advice is, well, if you got a few minutes, why don't you take a look at it? You might be surprised what you find. I could definitely see this show, say they were making it today, with new actors and all that other kind of stuff. conceptually, I could see this show doing very well. A couple, work as detectives, and she has some minimal psychic powers, which get him into some trouble every once in a while. And I mean, I could see that show working. For God's sakes, if Hallmark Christmas movies can be as big as they are, I can't imagine that Tucker's Witch couldn't be a pretty solid TV show in this day and age. Sometimes things just don't work out for a show. So give shows a try when they come across. Maybe you've never heard of it. Maybe it's even something that you go, I don't typically like this kind of show. Give it a shot. I mean, 30 minutes of your life to give a show a fair chance. Is 30 minutes so much to have to give up? I mean, think about how much, scrolling on a phone, looking at, Twitter or X or Instagram or whatever the hell any of these things are called nowadays. You burn off time like crazy doing that. Maybe burn off some time with an old show that you may discover is like a show that you really love. Maybe we can get some fanfic for Tucker's Witch. I don't mean the weird stuff. I've already written a bunch of that. I mean, like, mainstream fan fiction. Maybe we could even get a reunion show produced. Probably not. Well, anyways. But give these shows a try. You might find out that there's something hiding out there that you really love and that you're going to really enjoy. Tucker's Witch might be it. Maybe it's something else. Well, anyways, that's my review of Tucker's Witch. Solid little detective show. Very cute. Had a cozy sort of feel to it. I looked forward to watching it every week. I'm kind of honestly sad that it went away. At the same time, I didn't fall absolutely head over heels with it. It's just not that kind of show, but it was a nice little show to watch, and I'm sorry that it didn't manage to get more episodes to at least get a full season. But I do suggest, especially if you like that kind of show, give it a try. If like, for example, my daughter lately is on a Murder, She Wrote kick. And I don't know if that's something, I know, kids her generation, like, suddenly went huge for Golden Girls a while back. I don't know if that's like, if it's just her or if it's a lot of other people that are watching Murder, She Wrote. If you're digging Murder, She Wrote, give Tucker's Witch a try. I think you'll find that you probably like kind of dig it, and it might become a little cult favorite for you. Well, that'll do it for me today. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like. Maybe think about subscribing. I talk about all sorts of pop culture over the 20th century, and I even hit a few new things now and again, from comic books to TV shows to movies to toys, etc. It's just all the stuff that I love. I like to try to share on my channel. And if that sounds good to you, maybe you want to subscribe, maybe share with a friend. In the meantime, God bless everybody out there. Please try to be kind to one another, and try to have a little bit of fun if you can. And I will see you next time in Dad's Den of Pop Culture.